This is the first in a series of videos that goes over everything you need to know about triads and how to practice them and learn them on the 8-string guitar. If you don't know why triads are important or how they might help you improve at the guitar, then you can check out the other video that I've made that goes over some basic theory behind the triad and some ways in which it can affect your guitar playing. That can be found up in the little eye here in the corner or down in the description below. So to get started today, make sure you download the PDF. It's the top link in the description below, and that's going to be some diagrams of every closed triad shape that we can have on the 8-string guitar. Using that, we'll be able to go through some of these exercises I'm going to present you, which I have learned and practiced for many hours in my life, and have helped me unlock the fretboard of my instrument. I'm just going to take a quick second to go over the basic theory as to how triads and their inversions are constructed, so if you already know all that stuff, feel free just to skip ahead to the exercises. A triad is created when you stack 3 notes together. The most common of these is the major triad, which contains the first, the third, and the fifth note of a major scale, all stacked on top of each other. If we stack them in order with the first note on the bottom, we call this a root position triad. If we instead put the middle note of the triad, or the third, on the bottom, it is called the first inversion. Finally, if we put the top note of the triad, or the fifth, on the bottom, that is called the second inversion. So we have root position, first inversion, and second inversion based on which note is the bottom. Other than the major triad, there are 4 other primary triad types. So the major, as we mentioned, has the 1, the 3, the 5 of the scale. And then we have minor, which has the 1, the flat 3, and the 5, so we lower the third. The diminished triad, which is the same as the minor, but also has a lowered fifth, so then that becomes 1, flat 3, and flat 5. The augmented triad, this is the same as a major triad, but with a raised fifth, so that will end up as the 1, the 3, and the sharp 5. And finally, we have the suspended triad. This is the same as a major triad, but instead of the 3rd degree of the scale, we put the 4th degree of the scale. So that will end up as the 1, the 4, and the 5. So in our first exercise, we are going to focus on individual string groups and find all of the triads there. So to start, let's pick a string group. I'm just going to start with my lowest string group, which is string 8, 7, and 6. We're going to pick a triad type, and again, just to keep it simple, we're going to begin with our major triads and leave minor, diminished, augmented, and suspended until later. The last thing we have to do to work on this exercise is pick a key. And again, just to keep it simple, I'm going to pick C major so that there are no sharps or flats to deal with. So what is the exercise? All we're going to do is work through the triad inversions on the string group that we have chosen. So for a C major triad, we're going to locate a root position triad, which has the C in the bass, build the shape up from there, and then we're going to work on finding the other inversions. So from here, I can move up to our first inversion, which has the 3rd in the bass, and then from there I can work up to our second inversion, which has the 5th of the triad in the bass. Once you get that, you can go through it a few times, start to get comfortable with those shapes as we are going to be dealing with them a lot. So this is just the beginning of memorizing them. Once you're comfortable with C major, try a different key. Let's pick maybe A major. So here's a root position triad with an A in the bass. First inversion, second inversion. Remember to go up past fret 12. Even though the triad shapes repeat, it's a good idea to become familiar with that area of the neck as well. Now you're going to want to do this process in all 12 keys. Now you can kind of do it at random, like we just did, picking keys until you get through all of them. Or you can do it systematically by doing something like the circle of fifths, or even like a 12-tone row or something, just to make sure that you hit every key in some sort of ordered or unordered structure. So doing it in the circle of fifths would look something like this. so forth. Once you get comfortable doing that on the lowest set of strings, you're going to want to move to the next set. So strings 7, 6, and 5. We're going to be doing everything the same here, except now our chords are going to be found in different positions. So no longer is our C root position shape on fret 6, because that note is an F. We instead have to find it in a different spot. So the C root position would be actually 10th position with our pinky on fret 13. So our lowest C triad we can play on this string group is actually a first inversion triad. Going through the cycle of fifths then, we could find that we have our F second position triad in the lowest position, B flat first inversion triad is lowest, and so on and so on. So you'll get used to where the notes are now on this string group. Continue this process, like before, on all of the different string groups, and you'll start to notice as we get up to any string group that includes string number 2, the shapes are going to be changing. Because that tuning between string 3 and string 2 is a major third instead of a perfect fourth like every other string, the shapes have to be altered a little bit, so pay special attention to that. Final and last step to this exercise is to start working on all of the other triad types. So far we've only done major, but you can do all of this with minor in every key, suspended in every key, augmented in every key, and diminished in every key. It's a simple exercise just going through these basic shapes on string groups, but it takes a lot of time, so don't be surprised if this exercise alone takes weeks or months to really get under your fingers and feel comfortable with. That is not to say we can't work on the other exercises while we are doing this. Keep coming back to this one, but it's a lot of work if you want to do it systematically and cover every key. Exercise number 2 is similar, except instead of focusing on string groups, we're going to focus in positions. So we're going to start by setting up the same parameters we had before. We're going to pick major triad in the key of C, and we're going to start on our lowest string group. But rather than traveling across horizontally to find the inversions, we're going to stay in a vertical motion in one, more or less, one position. So here we have the root position, and then our first inversion is right next to it, and then second inversion, and we get another root position, first inversion, and second inversion. So we actually moved backwards a little bit horizontally. But that's alright. The idea here is just to connect our shapes rather than having to jump around the neck. So whenever we go to a new shape, all we're doing is taking that lowest note and moving it up an octave, and the other two notes will be staying the same. So it shouldn't be too hard to build these connections. There'll be some position shifts or finger shifts in order to become more comfortable, but there's no big leaps across the neck. So just like the first exercise, you're going to want to do this in C major, F major, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, every key, in order to get comfortable with all the different possible note groupings on the neck. The next step of this exercise is not to start in the root position of the key, but the first inversion of the key. So rather than starting here, I'm going to start here and do the same thing. So we have first inversion, second, root, first, second, and root. Once I get comfortable with that, starting in the first inversion, I can do the same thing starting in second inversion. So we start a second inversion, root, first inversion, second inversion, root position, first inversion. So now I have 3 areas where I know C major exists in the neck, and I have these connections building not only horizontally from our first exercise, but vertically and slightly diagonally from this exercise. All keys, all positions, all inversions, all triad types. So do this with minor, suspended, augmented, and diminished as well. And again, these exercises take months to get under the fingers, so just keep track on a spreadsheet or something what keys you've covered, what positions you've covered, because it's kind of a long haul to get into this stuff. Third and final exercise combines exercise 1 and 2 so that we are no longer constricted into a single position or a single string group. The goal of this exercise is to move from our lowest possible inversion of a triad in a key to the highest possible version. And we can accomplish this either by moving through the position and up, or diagonally across the neck. Let me show you. So if we're in C major, our lowest possible inversion we can play on the guitar, the 8-string guitar in standard tuning, I should specify, is the second inversion with the G, C, and open E string. Our first way we can get across all of the inversions and go across the entire range of our guitar is just going to be to go through and stick to the kind of the lowest inversions that we can reach using open strings. And then once we get to our topmost string group, we're going to start going up. And then I can return back down. Okay, so we travel in one position using all the open strings and then move up the top of the guitar neck. So the other way to accomplish this is to move a little bit more gradually on the diagonal across the guitar neck, and this will amount to about 2 inversions per string group. So I'll show you what I mean again. So we have our lowest possible triad in the key, so again I'm in C major. It's going to be our second inversion shape. Move up to the next shape, and then I'm going to change string group. So we have first inversion and second inversion, and then change string group. So I'm doing 2 shapes per string group. And it gets me to the exact same spot that I did before. A fun way to do this exercise is to go up in one key and then go down in the next key. So once I get to my kind of topmost shape for C major, I'm going to switch, and I just do this in the circle of fifths to keep it simple for myself. I'm going to go to F major here, which is pretty squished up here, but I can grab it. And work my way down, and then that'll have been 2 keys covered, and I can continue moving on. It just makes the exercise go a little bit quicker once you start to get used to the shapes. Again, doing major, minor, diminished, augmented, and suspended, and you'll have every triad in every position across your entire fretboard. So I really want to stress how much work those exercises actually are. If you do every key, every position, every inversion, and work through all those different exercises, that's about 2 to 3 years of work. So it might take you a long time if you are looking to have a systematic knowledge like that, but that's not to say you have to. Pick several keys, pick several positions to start in, make it bite-sized chunks in order to make it more manageable. You'll also find that the beginning of learning this stuff is a lot more painful than after, say, about a month. Your fingers will get used to the shapes, your knowledge of the fretboard will begin to get better, and even if at that point you start to try to do something in a key you've never played in before, chances are it won't take that long to get used to it, since you already have the chord shapes and the fretboard knowledge better than you had before. So it's not a linear progression through this, it's very exponential. It's going to be a lot of upfront work, and then it gets easier as you go. In the next video about triads, I'm going to cover the shape that I find works the best for 8-string guitar and makes the best use of our low strings without muddying up our sound too much. So make sure you stay tuned for that, subscribe if you haven't so that you get notified when that video comes out, and if you want to support the channel, you can buy me a coffee down in the link below. With all that said, I hope you have a great rest of your day wherever you are, and as always, happy practicing.